The boycott was the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan, I think, the last week of December, and President Carter's reaction to that was to request / order an American boycott of the games in Moscow as a retaliation. It struck me as I thought it wasn't a satisfactory approach to me. I thought that you're asking an awful sacrifice from these kids that had one shot, and Isaiah Thomas was an example. Isaiah was the captain was not the captain, excuse me, but it was probably the best player on the ADU Olympic team that didn't go. It was a totally different situation when it was all amateur, because once a kid's through college, he has to either go pro or go out of training into some profession. So there was really just one chance. Then in '84, the Olympics were in Los Angeles. Well, that was a great summer for Bloomington, because Bob Knight was the basketball coach and the trials were here. The 48 tremendous basketball players were brought in here from around the country, and there were 2 nights of double headers at Assembly Hall, and the cut was down to 32 by then, and 4 teams of 8 played against each other, and it was there are probably about 7 or 8 of those that are in the Basketball Hall of Fame today. So it was great competition, and of course the headliner was Michael Jordan, and that was just when basketball was starting to see how really good Michael Jordan was. He was College Player of the Year, but he was also the number 3 pick in that draft that year. The two guys were taken ahead of him. Well, those 2 were not up to. One was Hakeem Olajuwon, so he certainly wasn't a disappointment in any sense. But Michael was, I think if you redraft, Michael still would probably go number 1, and he showed that here in this summer that we had him working out here with that team. Steve Alford, as a freshman at IU, had played on the Olympic team, started for the Olympic team, had the best shooting percentage on that team, and did a marvelous job as a freshman. And they won the gold.
Did you ever ask Bob Knight why he didn't take Charles Barkley?
Well, there wasn't any question why Charles Barkley was a great player, and was the second best player in the trials without any question. But he also was fat, and they had, when they had them here, they were cut down to I think about 15 on the way to 12. Sent him home for a month, and Bob told him that he couldn't play at the weight he was playing, and he wanted him down 10 pounds. Well, he came back 10 pounds heavier, and he sent him home. He said on the idea that if you're not willing to be honest, I suspect Charles wasn't all that disappointed with going home, because he could get his paycheck, professional paycheck right away, and cash his money and get going. And there was no question that Barkley was a great player, but he was weighing, I think, 258 at that time. Bob told him to get 248. Well, he had a great rookie season playing at 240. he was a totally different player when he was in good shape. And at that time, the Soviets countered the U.S. boycott of '80 by boycotting the Los Angeles games. That was a huge disappointment to Bob, because he really wanted to play against the Soviet team. That Munich game had still not been avenged, because they didn't play at each other in '76. Yugoslavia upset the Soviets in the semifinals at Montreal, so they didn't play there. They didn't play at Moscow in '80, and then in '84 they were hoping to play them at Los Angeles. Well, they didn't play them again. So And when they did, ironically, when they did play again in '88 at Seoul, the Soviets won again. So it was a long while before they got that advanced. But Bob was just wowed by how good Michael was, and one of his good friends was Stu Inman, who was the general manager of the Portland Trailblazers, and they had the second pick. Well, it was a foregone conclusion. Houston was going to take Olajuwon with the first pick, and so Bob told Inman, he said, "Stu, you got to take Jordan second." And he said, "Bob, we need a center." He said, "Play Jordan at center." He said, "You got to take Jordan." Well, they didn't, and they regretted it. The Chicago Bulls came third and took him, and history was set. But that was, there was no question how good Jordan was. Once he and Bob had kind of there was a certain playful area to it that Michael had a great habit of violating one of the cardinal rules of basketball, getting up in the air and really not knowing whether he was going to drop off a pass or maybe and Bob was waiting on him sometime to fail. And he never did. He always pulled off a play, and to the point that there was one time when he almost was down before he slipped a pass off to somebody for a basket, and as he spun around to go back up the court, he winked at Bob. So he knew what he was waiting on, but he got away with it. He was that good a player, and it was eye-opening to watch how good he was day in and day out, and he was just blossoming because he was a great player in college, but he wasn't Michael Jordan yet, and in fact he wasn't for another year or two in the pros, but he was certainly on his way, and he showed he had skills that were just unmatched. At Los Angeles, IU was also well represented in track. Jim Spivey and Sunder Nix were there, and Sunder won a gold in the 4x4 relay. Finished fifth in the 400 meters. He could have won it. It was a blanket finish, and he just it was that close. But he did get his gold, leading off the American relay team. Then '88 in Seoul, the games were during the fall, during the football season. I couldn't go to something during the IU football season, so I had to scratch that one.